Shalom and good day all. This is Tehillim29 back again for the Joker's Wild. And in this episode of the Joker's Wild, which I'll probably revisit again maybe later on in another episode, is that with today's episode, I would like to address Star Wars. And of course, I've got a couple of articles that I've already written up and going to use as a bit of a foundation to talk about the subject. So, a big thanks to anyone who happens to make it to the live stream. And I did send a bit of an invitation out to some people to see if they were able to make it or not. But should any of them turn up, so be it. If not, well, I'm doing this solo. So, first things first, I would like to come to an article to which I actually did a couple of years back. And this is when a little bit after Solo, a Star Wars story came out. And my goodness, a lot of time has actually passed since then. So when I first did this article, it was probably around, what was it, 2018, 2019, in that time period of things. There we go, June 6, 2018. And I've got quite a bit to say about the Star Wars franchise. As recently, I have sort of like gone back to finish off a couple of things that I didn't get to finish off in relation to Star Wars. A little bit before that, I've just been really staying away from it. And as you can see here, seeing that this is the Joker's Wild, I start off with The Joke's on You, Solo, a Star Wars story. And as we can see here, we've got the cast of characters that are connected to this actual movie. And no doubt, they were interesting choices, but they really didn't need to make this. And that's the complete truth. They really didn't need to make this. So, as you can see here, we've got the movies that led up to Solo, a Star Wars story. So we've got The Fast Awakens, Reckless One. Yes, I'm calling them different names. And Star Wars, The Farty Jedi. And moving into the first part of the article, I call it Star Wars, The Retcon Awakens. And I must admit, when I made a start on this article, yes, it was actually just after coming back from seeing Solo, a Star Wars story. And with its cast of characters, I've been thinking over the Disney retcon of Star Wars. And first things first, we have J.J. Abrams, thinking we have never had a female Jedi before. When you look at the prequels, we, in fact, that they did actually have some female Jedi in Star Wars, including in the High Council. Of course, there was one of the same species as Yoda, which is named Yaddle, and then there was other characters too, to which they also took the time, or to which George Lucas took the time to create for us to watch. in those movies. Then we have the retcon of the original stories by Disney by bringing out new novels based around the original trilogy, plus additional novels and comics, including animated series. Now, we know that some of the animated series that were connected to this, and including the last season of the Clone Wars, that would in technicality be counted as that as well. Then we have Star Wars Resistance. With Star Wars Resistance, we also had the Star Wars Rebels, and then we've got the crazy little shorts that have been shown on the Star Wars YouTube channel, to which I haven't really watched any of them because Disney involvement. And we originally, when we, where we originally had a whole series of movies which showed no illusion of a fuel crisis, to where you had blockades and the Coruscant Republic, its adversary being the Separatists, and later on the formation of a rebellion in minor glimpses via Revenge of the Sith. George Lucas only intended Darth Vader, Anakin Skywalker, to be the chosen one of the Force to set a balance, who later, with Padme, had twins Luke. He knew he was his son, but he didn't know Leia was his daughter. Um, so that was really well set. And as you can see here, I've got something in relation to Spaceballs. With Rogue One placed into the mix, it changes the scenario to something which you would see from Spaceballs, with its code to enter a shield into a planet to infiltrate to get plans to of the Grand Death Star, plus a main character who is seen as a nobody, which is then applied which is then applied into Force Awakens. Um, After Rogue One, we got the catastrophe called The Last Jedi. Of course, we do have the droid BB-8, which looks like an oversized Jedi training remote. And as you can see here, I've got some pictures, which they basically duplicated another time and made it black. So, what is the killing joke in all these series of films? And this is just starting off with the first article that I created in relation of the topic of Star Wars. So, with the characters that are badly fleshed out, like Ray, Holdo, Rose Tico, no hate against the actors, because the writer for the transfers treat the characters like toilet paper dolls. Then we have Poe Dameron, Finn, and even BB-8, which come off as shallow shells of people without real motivation. And I must admit, with that, it is very disappointing to see that, because when these first ones were out, that's how the characters came across. In other words, not just shallow, but also soulless. Um, then we have the disrespect of the original story characters, from Han Solo, to which I'll cover soon enough. To which I'll cover Solo soon enough. Leia Organa, Luke Skywalker, C-3PO, R2-D2, Yoda. Instead, we are given characters to set a form of agenda of merit of agenda narrative, much like our 337, or Leet, as the character was called in the actual thingo. Um, the death has become the main central theme in all these new films. Death of resistance to become the new rebellion, death of old characters to replace the new, death of the original trilogy canon to replace it with its new, death of the First Order to be replaced with the new, the death of the past to create a bad egocentric future coming from both sides that come off as unstable mental patients who have left Arkham Asylum. Now, as you can see here, I've got a bit of a character of Lee, and how the character sort of reminded me of like a bit of somewhat a bit of a mass ripoff of um, one of the characters from Power Rangers, as well as the character from Spaceballs, who is basically the robot that watches over that princess in the film. Then, of course, we move into the review here, of which I covered of a Solo, a Star Wars story. Now, to Solo, a Star Wars story, starting off with Han, we are given a disingenuous retcon about Han Solo himself, making himself a product of the Empire. And what do I mean by a product of the Empire? Where according to the legends or the original Han Solo trilogy, it it was a part of his family name with him on Corellia, with Kira as a bit of a puppy love um, towards her in the time that he has known her, like in relation to the present story. Um, as they try not only to or they try to escape not only Corellia but also the Empire. But we do see Han join the Empire, which lines up with the original trilogy canon set around Han Solo in the novels. Um, but when he does enter the Empire, or in that time, he is known as Han Solo. Um, but when we go to this one, they completely change that. They completely ruin that with their retcon. And it's to which the name Solo is now a Empire product name. So in this, they are practically equating Han Solo to being Team Totalitarian Empire. So it's not his actual name. It's a name that the Empire gave him. And that was absolutely horrid. I mean it. That was absolutely horrid. It totally disjoints his character um, from the original franchise. And we do see Han join the Empire, which joins to the original, the George Lucas original canon. To later meet with Chewbacca in a pit, which was set for his doom, only to change manages to speak to some Wookiee, or to speak some Wookiee. Personally, though, I did actually like the introduction of how Han did meet Chewbacca in the film, but since last rewatching that, so a bit of a update on the personal note. I prefer the original story over this story now, only because the original story gave the character more of a scoundrel hero moment in relation with Han and Chewie. Continue. continuing as Han meets the crew of vagabonds like himself, also looking to escape the war zone of a planet not mentioned on the screen, um, to whom he finds out later on work for Crimson Dawn, which is connected to the work of Darth Maul. Yes, it's a fucking spoiler. With the retcon of Lando 2 in the film, which finally leads to Han in the end getting his Millennium Falcon, to which Lando has a droid called Leet or L337, which I'm glad the droid died as early as it did. Thank bloody goodness. Um, it was freaking terrible. Um, Jar Jar Binks is a better character than Leet. Of the short time on screen, Leet had it wasn't without some form of destruction because of its own agenda. Um, and of what I heard, it did remind me of a parodying of Kathleen Kennedy. To which I want to say, if the Force is female, it has fucked up the Star Wars universe by not showing an all female Star Wars universe to suit its own agenda. And would inherently go against all things such as pansexual, etc., whether they do or don't exist in that universe. But back to the topic, it was nice to see the Game of Sabak brought into the movie again, but the retcon of the Kessel round to be around fuel instead of spice was terribly wrong, because it was around the Kessel round in the original trilogy that Han Solo lost his spice for Jabba the Hutt, care of the Imperial interference. And that's a bit of a link in relation to what the actual book spoke about. And that is why he lost the spice for Jabba the Hutt. As we see here with Disney's Star Wars, they think that their joke is on us, when in reality, the joke is on you, Disney Star Wars. Now, I'll move to the next one related to this article. And this is The Joke's on You, the Disney Star Wars trilogy. So, as we can see here, we move into the rise of Palpatine. And moving straight in relation to this, Palpatine wins. This movie, even with its spoilers that had been released, is still a terrible movie. I feel bad for all the actors that were put in this trash fire Disney Star Wars sequel trilogy, as this story was so soulless that the only fans it pandered to wasn't to Star Wars fans at all, but to Hollywood chill fans. So it shows a lot of difference between what has actually happened to the Star Wars franchise. And where with George Lucas, he was more interested in going against the grain than going with the grain. Moving into the next thing, Disney fatigued. After seeing all of these Disney sequel trilogy, I am Disney fatigued. Not Star Wars fatigue, as I can still get great Star Wars stories in the prequel, original, and Legends EU canon. Bob Iger, killer of the Star Wars franchise. George Lucas had a great franchise in the start in Star Wars, even in Bob Iger's own book, he admitted that George Lucas didn't see Disney Star Wars stories as his Star Wars stories. I wonder why. I believe that I believe what Bob Iger said in the book about George Lucas is that he had a great opportunity to let George Lucas finish what he started, being the original 9 part of the Skywalker saga. And Bob Iger, he basically flushed it down the toilet to pander to political propaganda. I've had the thought as well that Kathleen Kennedy, to head Lucasfilm in Disney, was actually Bob Iger's idea and not George Lucas's, as it feels right to this day. Now, moving into the film and in relation to the film, at the time and when I got to see it, and this was in 2019, um, first act, with the first act opening up with Kylo Ren, who eventually met up with Palpatine, it felt like it was trying to promise something big. There was also some instances to even Rose Tico actually felt likable or felt like a likable character. Of course, when starting to move on to Finn and Poe, doing some stupid maneuver, only someone of an infantile mind like J.J. Abrams could think of, then eventually meeting up with Ray, who felt like J.J. Abrams' favorite sex doll in the movie, to be completely blunt about it. The second act tried to move into different grounds, also doing what it could do to erase the past of Ryan Johnson in The Last Jedi through a stupid attempt to um, a stupid attempt that fell flat in areas when bringing in Leia Organa, to which they should have left dead after The Last Jedi. The McClunky chasing of wayfinders of planet hopping felt stupid. This is also around the same time I also started to lose interest in Rose Tico. Again, beautiful actress. It was also nice to see the appearance of Luke, Han, Lando, and Chewie. Though not all together, um, they made it worth the liquor I purchased while seeing the movie. So, and the only thing really good about this was mainly the original characters. Moving into the last act, um, this act felt like it had the worst ass pulls from people dying by overuse of the Force. Sorry, but that shit never happened in the prequels or the original trilogy. From unnecessary healings of Rey, who should have died in this saga and let Kylo Ren live, redeemed by Rey Palpatine's sacrifice against Aspel Palpatine, to which it could have ended true to the title of this movie being The Rise of Skywalker. So, the Joker's laughing gas won't save this Disney Star Wars franchise. My rating overall, uh, basically I'm gonna have to say for all the way through, from first to last movie that they've actually put out. Story 1 out of 10, music 8 out of 10. There was some okay music. Filming was a 5 out of 10. Supporting characters 2 out of 10, and main characters 3 out of 10. Well, a lot has definitely gone on and changed since then, and feel free to check out those little reviews on the Joker's Wild. Since then, I have started to have a return to some of the Disney products. One of the latest things that, yes, I have been rechecking out. I did end up watching the last season of. I did watch the last season of Clone Wars, to which I really didn't quite enjoy the last season of Clone Wars. Though there were some interesting things in it, the whole Clone Wars series needs an Order 66. Literally, it needs an Order 66. And I still side with George Lucas in this, because even he said it himself, is that according to his own canon, Ahsoka would not be alive in the Clone Wars animated series. She wasn't even seen in the early 2D animation, Clone Wars animated, which was actually a little bit better than the present Clone Wars animated series. But at the time, I don't think Dave Filoni was actually on it. Another one that I am going back and returning to and having a bit of a look at, and that is the Star Wars Rebels. Now, there will be the Resistance one, which I'll have to check out, though I don't need to check it out. But I also want to see how bad the changes are in the story, because with some of the things that happened in Clone Wars, as well as some of the things that happen in Rebels, we've got, for example, Kanan Jarrus finding someone who is force sensitive. And let me say one thing, he is a terrible teacher. And he just does not have the patience for it, because he's too focused on other things, including missions. And Ezra, yeah, though the character is a little bit old, you only get so much about the character. So, what more is there that that Star Wars has presently ruined? Well, apart from the continuity and the lore around, for example, the crystals, or should I say, um, for example, lightsabers in the present Star Wars. It's absolutely terrible. For example, one thing that they did try to bring in the Disney Star Wars was the bleeding of basically the Jedi crystal. Well, the thing is, that idea is also taken from, well, it's also used in correlation with something else, and that is more so the video games. Now, they're in, say, for example, KOTOR and KOTOR 2. You can blatantly see that they stole from the idea from the actual video games. And with the video game, the main character, to which in the first one is Revan, but in the second one, it's actually, I think it's Mitris. Now, I'm just going according to the games, not according to like the written, like the comics and stuff. When you're playing those video games, the closest thing to the bleeding of a Jedi crystal is that when you retrieve your Jedi crystal, whether it's in KOTOR or KOTOR 2, mainly with KOTOR 1, I believe that the personal crystal of Revan, it actually had like a lot of bonuses in the light side of the Force. Though when it moved into the topic of, say, changing those bonuses, it was more so seen in the second of KOTOR, to which with the main character in that KOTOR, or in KOTOR 2, or Knights of the Old Republic 2, when the main character found their crystal, or like their Jedi crystal, which they could use, it had bonuses like for should you be on the light side, it would like give you certain things, but should you go full dark side, it would also give you certain things. And this is where you start to see the bleeding type effect, which is seen in more so being done in the Star Wars comics than seen, for example, done with say the lightsabers being changed, going from whatever color they were before, whether it's white, blue, green, whatever, turning to red. In this case, it was like one actual crystal which belonged to the Jedi. But one thing that I really like when you come to the original trilogy is that, and also the stories around the original trilogy in the EU, is that one thing that really stood out, the differences between the Sith and the Jedi, is that the Jedi had like their own legit crystals. But as for the Sith, they had their own synthetic crystals. And we don't get to see that anymore in the present Disney Soy Wars. And this is what I feel sort of ruins the present day Disney, or the Disney Star Wars, because the whole idea of the synthetic crystals was basically the Sith's version of the cheat code of like trying to get somewhat a stronger lightsaber blade, or a more powerful lightsaber blade. But when it comes to moving into the Jedi understood that things took time to process, even for a crystal to form. And that's where you sort of like see the balance of the two. The Sith like to be hasty, they like to take the easy way out, where the Jedi understood, or were meant to understand at the time, that things had a bit of a process. And you really don't see that anymore in the present Disney Star Wars. And the fact that it's sort of like bringing all this ridiculous agenda politics, it is literally burning itself to the ground. Now, I've watched reviews from Raging Rhino plus other channels that have covered Star Wars on their channel. It has really lost its way from the original content and from what George Lucas had originally planned. Yes, though it might have been sold off to Disney, it's still in technicality his product. And with the losses that Disney has had, yeah, maybe George Lucas should get his product back and maybe bring out some animated series. Something like that would not hurt the franchise. But Disney have dug their hole, they've dug their grave, and they still continue to dig deeper with it. Actually, you know what I might do? Um, Actually, one thing I might do is cover this. And that is the trailer for Andor. And of course, people have had their reactions to it as well. So, how about mine? And so, what I'll do is I'll probably cover maybe 5 to 10 seconds of each as we go through this. And as we look here with this news, as things begin for them bringing in Andor, you can definitely ask yourself some questions. What the heck is up with this? What is this gun doing in here? It does not, in any way, shape, or form, suit the Star Wars franchise. So we'll move into the next 10 seconds. As we move into the next thing, no doubt there is a bit of a wasteland of sorts showing here. And they are indeed doing what they can to try to show something off here, which is really terrible. What's this meant to be? Is this meant to be the Alien franchise? Is it meant to be the Predator franchise? It's certainly not the Star Wars franchise.
To steal from the Empire? They're so proud of themselves.
And as we look further into what's happening here, we get to see someone that's connected to the Empire, whatever the hell is happening here. As we move into the Senate building, this has got to be one of the worst things that has been presented here. It was so much better in the original Star Wars.
Of themselves. So fat and satisfied. They can't imagine that someone like me would ever get inside their house.
And of course, they try to give us a bit of a lead up to what is happening here and how Cassian Andor managed to infiltrate the Empire. Um, Absolutely boring as to be complete. Um, the thing is, we've already had characters in the Star Wars storyline through George Lucas that have already done these things. And of course, this is their own created character. And no doubt they'll be pushing all that they can to promote this character. But the thing is, this character is completely useless. Yes, they might tie things up to Mon Mothma, and I wouldn't be surprised if they actually destroy Mon Mothma. Hey man, did you watch any new anime? And Star Wars and Disney? Well, Michael Brent, I have actually been talking about Star Wars and or Disney Star Wars, and that's why I've got the finger of the thumbnail showing a Darth Joker. But nice to see you, Michael Brent. It's been a while, and I hope you're doing well. I'm glad you're able to make it. But I have actually gone back to watch the last season of um, the Clone Wars, to which I didn't really enjoy that much. And if anything, I think both Darth Maul and Ahsoka should be dead in the Star Wars franchise. Even though, yes, they're going to be creating a series around Ahsoka, they might as well just create one around Darth Maul as well. To be completely honest. Um, but one thing about that is at least George Lucas already had content of how Darth Maul became who he was. Yeah, Disney isn't doing so well with Star Wars and now Marvel. Yes, and on the topic of Marvel as well, um, I've or I've also heard that what is it? David Zaslav is also somewhat inspired with what Kevin Feige did with the Marvel franchise. Um, but the thing is, if he's going to be working on things somewhat movie related, he still needs to bring out the content which is comic related, like because you've still got customers here that buy the comics. And of course, whilst Disney was bringing out their movies, um, of course, even with Star Wars, Marvel, they were still putting out the Marvel comics, the Marvel graphic novels. They were still putting out those things. So Ahsoka grew to be my favorite character. Well, I'm glad you did actually get to like the character, Michael Brent, but I feel that they should have kept with George Lucas's original idea with Ahsoka, and that was for her to die with Order 66. And I think that would have been so much stronger, would have been so much better, because when you look to the second, or no, the first somewhat Clone Wars animated series, because there were It wasn't 2008. There was another one before that one. I think it was. There it is. That's the one. The Cartoon Network one. In 2003. I'll see if I can. Um, find a link to it. According to this, the distributor of this particular series was also Warner Brothers. That's interesting. All right, I'll share the screen. I don't like Wikipedia that much, but for this, I am going to have to use it. This was the Star Wars Clone Wars, uh, like one of the first original animated series, which came out in 2003, sort of like after the original Attack of the Clones. Yeah, Star Killer is already a forgotten character in Star Wars Force Unleashed, and yeah, do you not trust Wiki? Yes, that's why I am actually curious of Wikipedia. I'm not too fond of it, but I'm gonna have to use it just for some of the things that are here. According to this, there were like 3 seasons that were connected to this. And this took place in consisting of 25 episodes altogether, starting in November to March 25. With, of course, the characters, we had Anakin, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Mace Windu, Count Dooku, Asajj Ventress. We also had the character of um, hey, Michael Brent, I believe you. It also had the character of what's his face? Count Dooku. We had Kit Fisto. There we go. General Grievous. That's it. General Grievous. I think General Grievous was way better in this than what he was in the other animated series. Even though I do understand the change in animation, we did have at least an attempt to connect with like some of the things that were happening with the Star Wars books. Of course, we've got the voice cast of members. And this is the list of episodes. So overall, 25 episodes. And this gives just a bit of a small indication of things that happen in the episodes. Now, I'd prefer to go to the source. Hey, good to see you, TV Smoker. I'm presently talking about the Star Wars franchise. And I recently covered earlier a couple of the articles that I wrote around when the movies came out, and I was using that as a bit of a foundation to get this story started. Yes, Asajj Ventress, Uh, General Grievous was way better on the 2003 Clone Wars show. That I do agree with. Indeed, he was. Um, yes, the Star Wars 3D did have its good points, but it also had its negative points, such as should you go to the 2003 one, there is zero indication that Anakin Skywalker ever had an apprentice of his own called Ahsoka. Though when we move into the Dave Filoni Clone Wars, that is when she was introduced in. Now, the differences between the two is quite a lot. Sure, one might not have had 7 seasons, but let's also include that in the Star Wars Clone Wars by Dave Filoni, it also had a Lost Missions DVD or Blu-ray set, which was actually never put on screen, but you could actually purchase it online. And I did manage to purchase it online. And in it, I got to see like some of the things that did actually address like some certain plot points that they had sort of like left behind. And in it, by what was seen in the lost episodes, what you see for basically season 7, none of those characters existed. Like with what happened with Ahsoka Tano, none of those characters existed. In other words, these lost missions were somewhat a setup for basically the last season. And I mean it. The idea of the brothers or the two sisters, not there. Didn't exist at all. That was something that came later by Dave Filoni. So, in other words, you have Dave Filoni retconning his own retcon. In other words, he's doing a Brian Michael Bendis. It's the only other way to put it. He was doing a Brian Michael Bendis. And I guess we have to create. Your character to stay in the story plot in Clone Wars TV. So yes, and thing is, if things had have kept on going with the Dave Filoni series, should they have put up the lost missions? We probably wouldn't have seen any more of like these new characters to which Dave Filoni put in season 7. In fact, it would have been the lost missions that would have been in technicality season 7, which would make the season 7 we see now more so season 8 of the Star Wars Clone Wars 3D run. Then there's moving into the Rebels, and then there's Resistance. Of what I saw of the art in the animation of Resistance, enough to make you puke. It was that bad. I don't even want to watch it, but I'm thinking what I might do is I'll revisit Star Wars again in another Joker's Wild. So just basically using this one today as a starting point in relation to Star Wars on through the Joker's Wild. Now, no doubt, by the time I reach the next episode, it most likely it's not going to be this the next episode coming up. Um, no doubt, I'll probably be addressing something else. Maybe for the next episode, I might want to address Brian Michael Bendis and what's happened with him in DC Comics. Yeah, I'm never going to watch Star Wars again until Disney get their priorities straight. That is totally understandable, Michael Brent. And you know what? Personally, with Disney, um, their priorities are far from straight. They are quite bent over, to be completely honest. Um, like for the fact that they want to try to push out that the Force is female. Well, if the Force is female throughout the whole Star Wars franchise, well, everything from the very beginning to the very end, they should have an all-female universe. But they haven't even done that. So, if anything, they have already destroyed their own past, showing that they do actually need males in their universe. You see, you can't make this shit up. Right? If that is their somewhat motto, the Force is female, well, it's the biggest farce for Disney Star Wars ever. And I mean it. It is literally the biggest farce for Disney Star Wars ever. Because if everything is going to be all female in a Star Wars universe, they might as well just create their own universe, their own multiverse or Star Wars multiverse, to which one of these multiverses is an all run female universe. Yeah, Avatar, The Last Airbender, Bender, and Gargoyle have great characters that can beat Disney Star Wars. In that, I would actually have to agree with you there, Michael Brent, because I have actually been catching up with the Avatar series. And there is a lot of good storytelling in Avatar The Last Airbender. Gargoyles, even though I haven't watched it for a long time, I still remember some of the main storytelling. But if they were to create or recreate the story today, it would be a complete and utter mess. I mean it. It would be a complete and utter mess because they don't care about anything about the original story. They only care about their own egocentric ideas. And that's the thing. They're they're centered about putting themselves first. It has become Disney Star Wars a selfish story. Right? They don't care about George Lucas's characters, whether they're in the prequels or in the original trilogy. Whether it's in the novels, the games. And one thing that I did actually come across, I heard recently, is that with the way how Disney was running things, they were running it like the sequel trilogy, like a video game. So, are we then to believe that um, the sequel trilogy that we see now is actually meant to be a sequel from the video game franchise, not the actual um, George Lucas original 6 episodes plus comics and novels, including other video games that are connected to it? But the thing is, with a lot of the Star Wars video games, a lot of them had better story and plot than what is to be believed about the presently running Disney Star Wars or Disney Soy Wars or however you want to call it. Um, and it's just a complete mess. Like, yeah, there was very, very few scenes that I actually liked in any of what came out. But in regards to sort of like liking the whole movie or liking a whole series, that's very few and far between. Did I enjoy The Force Awakens when I first saw it? No, I actually hated it. I did not enjoy The Force Awakens at all when it came out. And one of the best things that Han Solo said in The Force Awakens was, "That's not how the Force works," right? And if anything, Han Solo was actually speaking for us, to those who actually have read through, watched like the original Star Wars as well as the prequels of how the Force actually works. And then we've got Disney coming in, changing completely how the Force actually works. Sorry, but if you got to destroy the law of something, there's no hope for your franchises at all. Then after that, we had Rogue One, which was basically a suicide mission story. And to be completely honest, when it comes to the Andor, um, so Andor leading to Rogue One, it's a useless story. They don't need to bring out Andor. Why? Because we already know the character's fate. The character's fate is he dies in Rogue One. what's the what's the bloody point? It's useless. Okay, sure, he might be connected to Mon Mothma because of how they want to set the story up. But I wouldn't be surprised if they also do something to change Mon Mothma as well. Because Mon Mothma, when she was originally brought into Star Wars, I believe she was a married woman to her husband. All right? Um, no doubt, when Disney get their hands onto this character, they're going to destroy that. If anything, they'll probably make her of a Team Alphabet crowd. And then, of course, we've got a number of episodes coming out in relation to Andor. I think the maximum number of episodes to the series, I know the first season is 3 episodes. And talk about no confidence in their product at all. Um, and I mean it literally, no confidence in their product at all. Then we move to the next thing in relation to their product, is how the other seasons are going to take to be done. So I think overall it's going to be, I think, 12 episodes. like for the whole actual series of how it's going to be broken down, and it just sounds like a big freaking mess. If anything, maybe they should just bring out the novel around the character. Nothing more, nothing less. Get rid of this bloody series around Andor completely. Now, as for other things around um, the Star Wars franchise, we've also had a list of other things that have also been announced, such as Acolyte, which does somewhat sound interesting because it sounds like it's going to be addressing maybe the early Sith in the Disney Star Wars era, not the original Sith of the George Lucas era. Then we have other things as well. Of course, there's the Ahsoka series, which they've had. Of course, there's been the catastrophe of the Book of Boba Fett, to which even Tamura Morrison, who also played the role of Django as well as this present day Boba Fett, um, my goodness. Even he has gone back to saying that he would prefer Boba Fett being the badass he used to be. And you know what? That is completely understandable because it even shows that he has no trust in the Disney franchise of Star Wars. And it's really incredible to see how this Disney Star Wars franchise is, I wouldn't say exploding, but more so imploding. Because I think in Disney Star Wars case, it's an inside job. It's a literal inside job of the destruction of the Disney Star Wars franchise, including destroying their own lore. Like with the Obi-Wan series, which I never watched. Of course, I'll probably check it out later on, but I'm not bloody checking it out straight away because of how terrible things look. To even the special effects and that, it is bad. And let's not forget the helicopter lightsabers. Hey, why wasn't Rava using her helicopter lightsaber? Or let alone one of the Inquisitors? Oh, what a joke! They can't even keep to their own lore which they create because they're just too busy wanting to give the oh, this is the first Black Jedi. What? So Mace Windu wasn't enough to be the first Black Jedi. That you gotta make it Reaver instead. Again, lore destruction. Like, where was the respect for Samuel L. Jackson? Oh, that's right, none. Because he was Mace Windu in the prequels. No respect for Samuel L. Jackson. What a complete joke that the Disney Star Wars franchise has turned out to be. Well, I might begin to end up the live stream, and a big, huge thanks to everyone who managed to drop in and make it. From Michael Brent, who actually did turn up a little bit later, but I'm not too worried about that. To Tevier Smolka, I'm not too sure if he's still here or watching in the background. And apart from that, that's about all. But I do certainly agree with you there that there are other series that are way better than this, to which you can get pretty decent storytelling, even if it's something older, that you can literally go out there and watch. In fact, one thing I was maybe thinking of doing on this channel was maybe getting a watch party up. And what I'll do is show on the day, or one series I'd like to maybe cover is the original Kung Fu series. That would probably be the first one for a watch party. And it would be nice to have people like come and join the live stream, even talk about the story creation in that time. And it would be really good to like talk about these stories and the episodes, and how a lot of storytelling in the past is so much better to what's happening in today's storytelling. Like, even the Ewoks. The Ewok storytelling could probably be considered better than the present day storytelling, whether it's Caravan or Courage or something else. Well, until then, a big thanks to everyone who made it to the live stream. And we'll see you again at the Joker's Wild.